I just found the most amazing power tool to help take your photography and videography to the next level. I want to talk about something that I stumbled across, and that is this rigid power inverter. This thing was on Tools Direct for $100. It came with 2 batteries. And you know, the purpose of this was to use it on job sites. So when I go and do some renovations, I have a power supply to power some tools that require an outlet. Now, you know, this thing isn't an unlimited source of power. You know, the max output that you get is 175 watts, which is still pretty good. But in terms of a lot of power tools that you would use this to power, it'll get the job done, but it won't exactly take you very far. I use this to power a snow cone machine, and I got a total of about 10 minutes of usage on that machine, which is not good, but it's not bad either. You know, it's something. But after receiving this thing, I decided to play around with it. Instead of using it to power tools, I used it to run a test, a simulation on like video equipment, lighting, and things like that. And the results were actually astonishing. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about why this is perfect for videographers and photographers. Number one, it's portable. This thing is the size of my hand, right? It's tall, yes, but it's the size of my hand. And so if you have a bin like what I have, then this thing fits nicely within that bin. And the nice thing is that the batteries are swappable. So you can carry a extra 4 amp hour battery, and if the 4 amp hour battery is a little too thick for you, you can go with the 2 amp hour battery, which also provides really great numbers in terms of powering our video and lighting equipment. What makes this special is that the batteries are swappable, number one. Number two, it's portable. And then number three, depending on what ecosystem you have, whether it's Ryobi, DeWalt, or Rigid, if you're a tool guy or girl and you have these tools inside your garage, then you already have the batteries, you have the ecosystem, so you don't really have to spend much more to get batteries. Now, there is an alternative method where you can get like a power bank, a big power bank, to help power your video and lighting equipment. But the problem with these power banks is that once the battery dies, it dies, so you have to charge it. And number two, they're usually bulkier, and so they take up more space. You can get a bigger battery bank. You can get like a bigger inverter that can like power a refrigerator for 5 hours, but those things are huge, the size of toolboxes. You're gonna have to store that separate. In terms of video lighting equipment, those things tend to be overkill. Hauling around that big inverter could potentially power your cameras and lightings for like weeks on end. It'll be great if you're going on like an excursion for like a week or whatnot, or you're going to camp for a week. It's great in those scenarios, but if you're just going to shoot something on location for just a couple of hours, then it's overkill, and you're better off getting this. Now, like I said, when you go on location, all you have to do is pull this out and you'll be able to power your video and lighting equipment. Even in a scenario where you go to a function like a wedding and you don't have access to a power outlet, if you have this in your trunk, which I always do, then it's right there, ready to be used. And I actually stumbled upon this scenario. I was shooting a wedding. There was no power outlet in the hall that we were shooting the wedding in, but I had this in my my equipment trunk, and so I pulled it out and started using this and was able to capture the whole entire wedding with no issues on one battery with power left to spare. I think I used like less than half of the battery capacity, so really great result. So with that out the way, let's go over some numbers that I found during my testing. So the first thing I use this inverter with is an LED light that I picked up from Home Depot. It's a 30-watt light, and it has a massive 3000 lumens output. And I was able to power this light for 1 hour and 4 minutes using a 2 amp hour battery, so the smaller battery. On a 4 amp hour battery, which is the larger one, I was able to power the light for 2 hours and 10 minutes. So if you have a camera that's already great on battery and you just need something to power your light source, this is a great alternative. Again, if you're just shooting on location for like an hour or two. So after I got that kind of results with the LED light, I decided to use it on something a little unconventional. My desktop PC, which is a monster. I use it to edit a lot of my videos on YouTube. And so I used my P3 gauge to find out how much watts the computer uses. So based on this meter, the desktop, if you leave it on the desktop screen idling, it uses less than 175 watts, which is within range of this inverter. I plugged the desktop into inverter and let the desktop idle on the desktop screen. And using the 4 amp hour battery, I was able to power the desktop for 1 hour and 3 minutes. Now, keep in mind that this is with no load. I could not power the desktop while using DaVinci Resolve because the wattage that's required to run the GPU and the CPU under a load, it was way more than what this inverter can handle. So I wasn't able to do that. But I'm pretty sure that if I opened a web browser and went to YouTube, I could have gotten maybe about 15 minutes of YouTube searching before the inverter had died. It's not something that's conventional, so you're not actually going to be using this to power your desktop, but I just thought it was cool that these batteries actually had the ability to power my desktop with no load. So after the desktop, the next thing I decided to try and power was that 32-inch TV. With a 4 amp hour battery, the inverter was able to power that TV for 3 hours and 12 minutes. That's a long time for a 32-inch TV. That blew my mind. I had no idea that these batteries were able to power a TV for 3 hours and 12 minutes. Now, unlike the desktop, I do think there are use cases. Maybe you have bad eyesight and you use a TV, a large TV, to connect it to your camera so you can get a better view of what you're shooting. In that scenario, this inverter would actually be useful for you because you can power the TV for 3 hours. So after powering the TV, I then moved to a camcorder and I ran the camcorder on record the entire duration, and the numbers I got was 9 hours and 46 minutes with a 4 amp hour battery, which is insane. 10 hours, almost 10 hours of usage. That's higher than any number I have ever been able to achieve using the Canon batteries with the XA10. Next, I decided to run the test on this Sony ZV-E10, and again, astonishingly, the numbers were very similar to the XA10, actually better. I was able to power the ZV-E10 for 10 hours and 30 minutes using a 4 amp hour battery. And just for comparison, this Wasabi battery for the ZV-E10 is 1300 milliamp hour, but this only powers the ZV-E10 for a max of 40 minutes. If I'm recording continuously, that number drops to about 30 minutes, but none of these batteries last longer than an hour. But with this 4 amp hour battery from Rigid, I get more than 10 times the power out of this battery. Now, like I said, you could use a 2 amp hour battery if you wanted to. Just all you have to do is basically the numbers that I got, you just slice them in half, and that's the number you can expect with the 2 amp hour battery. And like I said, this is something that I've used a couple of times already while shooting on location. Even while shooting indoors, I wasn't near an outlet to get the field of view that I was looking for, but I didn't have to worry because I had this. And this wasn't just powering one device. I had this powering the ZV-E10, it was powering the Canon XA10, and then it was also powering my phone because I was using my phone as a hotspot. But like I said, if you're going to be shooting for longer than a couple of hours, then yeah, you're probably better off getting like an EcoFlow inverter and using that behemoth to power your equipment, especially if you have a lot of equipment. But if you're a novice like myself and you only have like 1 or 2 or 3 equipment that you want to power using an AC outlet, I think this inverter is a great alternative, mainly because if you go with an ecosystem that you've already developed, you already have the batteries, and then it's hot swappable, so you just swap the batteries on the fly if they die. Where if you get a small battery bank, it dies, it dies. You're gonna have to charge it. You can't swap out the batteries. But that's not to say that, you know, these small little power banks are useless. I do recommend you grabbing a couple of these, like 1 or 2, because they do come in handy. I was on my way to shoot a YouTube video. It was actually for the Sony DSC T2, and my battery was dead. What I ended up doing was connecting my battery charger to this power bank, which had a full battery life, and then I tucked everything, I put everything in my camera case and head down to film that Sony DSC T2 video. And by the time I got there, because it's a 2-hour trip, by the time I got to that location, my camera battery was full. I was able to shoot footage for that video. So these things do come in handy. And that's all I have for this video. Just thought I'd share a couple of those hacks that I've been using for video and photography. Hope you found it helpful. If you did, be sure to mash that like button. Consider subscribing if you like videos like these. My name is Z. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I look forward to catching you in the next one. Peace.